So for this biscuit recipe, you're going to need 250 grams of butter or a dairy-free alternative. I took my butter out of the fridge earlier and chopped it up and then left it out to get to room temperature before we start beating with it. You're also going to need 1 cup of sugar, or I'm using caster sugar, but you can use any kind of sugar you like. Brown sugar or raw sugar is also okay. 1 egg. And then you're going to need 2 cups of flour. I'm using plain flour, so a bit later I'm going to add some baking powder, but if you have self-raising flour already, that's perfect. So the first step is to put our butter in our big mixing bowl. Then you're going to add to that your 1 cup of sugar. I'm very lucky, I have some beaters here that can do the work for me, but it's also okay if you're going to do this by hand. So I'm going to put my machine on and we're going to cream this butter and sugar together. Okay, I've been beating the butter and sugar for about 3 minutes. And we're still going to need to put it on for about another 2, just so we get it a super light and fluffy consistency. Okay, so this is looking pretty good to me. I can tell that all the sugar is dissolved and it's looking like a pretty good pale yellow, so I might pause it here and add my flour. So for this recipe, you're going to need 2 cups of flour. I'm using plain flour, so I'm also going to add 3 teaspoons of baking powder, but if you have self-raising flour already at home, that is perfect. So it's going to scoop out 1 cup. It's good to get it as even as you can. Put that in our bowl. Second cup. All right, now we're just going to measure out our 3 teaspoons of baking powder. 1. Okay, now we've got all our flour measured and ready to go. We first need to add in 1 egg to our butter and sugar mixture over here. So I'm going to crack my egg directly into the bowl. And we just need to beat it until it's incorporated. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna take my bowl out and add in maybe half of this flour mixture to start with. Keep adding a little bit more while we beat. Okay, so at this stage, you should have kind of like a sticky dough forming. And if your mixture is beginning to look like this, it's probably a good time to take it out from underneath the beaters. And we can finish off the rest by hand. So the next step is to, I prepared them earlier, so to get some baking trays and line them with some sheets of baking paper. I've just done this with butter underneath, but spray oil will also work. Before we move on to our next step, we're going to wash our hands again because this is going to involve a little bit of rolling. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to re-wash my hands. And then for me, I'm going to use almost like an ice cream scoop to do my cookies because I want them to be nice and big for when I decorate them later. But you can do any size cookies that you would like to. So I'm just going to start scooping out some mixture into a little ball. And I might take my hands and form them into looking something a bit like this and plonk it down on the plate paper. Cool, so I've just finished rolling out all my little biscuits. The batter I made was perfect for about 30 biscuits, which fit really nicely across 2 different baking tins. And now the final step before we put them in the oven is to squish them down with a fork. So we're just going to go in the center and make little squishies so they flatten in the oven. All right, to the final step, we've given all our biscuits a nice little squish with a fork. Now we're going to pop them into our preheated oven, which has been preheated to 190 degrees, and they're going to take about 12 to 15 minutes to bake. Great, so we've just pulled out our biscuits from the oven, and as you can see, they've turned into this beautiful golden brown color. And I left my biscuits in the oven for about 12 minutes, but my oven's pretty hot, so it might be 15 minutes for you. So because we need our biscuits to be completely cool before we can start icing them, now is a great time to start making our icing. So for this, you're going to need 400 grams of icing sugar. For me, when I measured it out, that was about 2 cups and 3/4 cups if you don't have a scale at home and you need to measure it. And we're also going to need 75 mils of lemon juice. When I juiced my lemons, that was about 2 lemons. But make sure once you're pouring it in, you're not getting any of the lemon seeds into your mixture. So the next step is, of course, to sift through your icing sugar. We don't want any lumps in our icings because we want it to be super duper shiny. So now we have our nice sifted icing sugar without any lumps. We can start to pour in our lemon juice. And then once we have about half the lemon juice in there, we're just going to give it a stir to start combining it together. So once we've got to this stage, we want to be really careful with the amount of lemon juice we're putting in. So I'm just going to add a few more drops here. So once you're happy with your basic icing, we're going to separate it into different bowls so we can start colouring our icing with food colouring. So I'm going to separate mine into 4 bowls, but you can make as many colours as you would like. So the 3 food colourings I have with me today are red, yellow and green. But if you had the primary colour of blue with you, you could make some fun combinations. You could combine blue and red to make a purple, but today I'm going to also combine red and yellow to make an orange, as well as my green, red and yellow mixtures. So to dye our icing, we're going to take a few drops of the food colouring we want. Just drop it into our bowl here. So this is a beautiful pink colour here. I want mine to be a little bit more red, so I'm going to put a few extra drops in, but you could stop here if you wanted to make maybe some pink love heart cookies for your mum. So as you can see, I've made a red, green and yellow mixture, but I'm now going to do some experimentation and see if we can get a nice orange colour for our last batch of icing. So now we have made all our icing, the next step is to decorate our biscuits. I've started on these 2 right here, but before we can decorate them with all these fun toppings, first of all, we need to ice our biscuit. So I'm going to show you how to do that with this orange colour here. You want to take a little scoop of our icing, plonk that on top. You might need to scrape it off with another spoon. Then we're just going to start spreading it out all the way to the corners. And a fun trick with this is to have a cup of hot water next to you that you can dip your spoon in just to melt the top layer of that icing a little bit, and this is going to make it much easier to spread to the edges. Perfect. And now for this one, I'm going to make a little base. We've got all of these great fun sprinkles to play with today, but if you don't have all of these sprinkles, you can make a super cool biscuit with just some M&Ms and a snake. So we're going to use a snake to create a little mouth for this guy. He'll have a purple mouth. We're gonna chop this guy off. Maybe to there. And then we're gonna put it on so he's nice and smiley. Then we're gonna find 2 eyes in here. Maybe this guy can have 2 yellow eyes. And then just stick them right there. How cute is that? Well, as you can see from my bench top, I had so much fun decorating all my biscuits. Here are some of the favorite designs I made, and I hope you have lots of fun with yours as well.